Hi, my name is Karthik, and I am a final year medical student at the University of Cambridge. Uh, and I'm joined by my friend, fellow Chettiar, Shyam, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shyam. I studied economics at Cambridge, joining the same year as Karthik in 2015. And after that, 2018, I joined the Boston Consulting Group, an American consulting company. And yeah, happy to be here to talk about some of my experiences applying for Cambridge.
Yeah, so as explained, we're just going to talk a bit about how the steps to take to try and get into Oxford or Cambridge to study our respective courses, which are medicine and economics, and hopefully you can take away some tips to help you in your preparation.
Yeah, so
Um,
starting
so
out,
yeah,
why did you study medicine, Karthik?
yeah. So always had an interest in science when I was at school. Always found it interesting, especially biology and how the human body works and how complex it can be, and how interesting it is to find out when things go wrong. Um, and I also was interested by the human aspect of it, the fact that you are meeting so many different people, you're working in teams, and applying the science to try and help people get better. So yeah, that combination of science and humanity is quite unique in medicine, and also quite rewarding in a long term career. So that's something that I saw in my work experience, and that helped confirm that this is a career that I can see myself in long term.
Yeah, and then how about, why Cambridge over Oxford or any of the other options out there?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that like all medical schools in the UK have like a pretty good standard. So getting into any medical school is good. So the choice then comes down to what kind of courses suit your style of learning and suit your preferences. So for me, I quite liked, after doing some research, the idea of concentrating mainly on the basic biomedical sciences in the first 3 years and having quite a good foundation before going on to do clinical work. So as somebody who was interested in like the research behind medicine and the science of it, that was practice for me, which is why I was more leaning towards the Oxford and Cambridge courses for medicine, as compared to some of the other courses which are a bit more integrated with a lot of clinical exposure early on. So yeah, that was one of the main decisions for me, and of course, obviously, the prestige and being taught by leading academics at Cambridge in small tutorial kind of systems was I thought a good way of learning.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So just because I've talked about the medical side of things, but just to return that back at you, Sean. So what made you decide to study economics?
Yeah, so interestingly, I was deciding between medicine and economics. I actually focused more on sciences up till the A-level point, and I was more keen on that. But then when I was making this decision, I was kind of thinking, what do I want to do for the rest of my life, like Karthik was saying. And for me, I guess at that point, based on my father's experience, who was a doctor, and also my uncle aunts who were doctors as well, it had been proposed to me at that point as quite a narrow career, I guess. Not to say that there aren't different specialities, but I think relative to economics, where there's a very broad range of things that you can do afterwards, you can always move job, you can always explore different countries. So for me, that side of it appealed. So I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into because no one around me had really studied economics. But I think it seemed to me when I looked at the career paths of other people who had gone to Cambridge, Oxford, that there were a lot of things that you could do, whether it's in government or whether it's in big companies. So I felt that there would be enough options out there. And it was a bit of an adventure doing something different to the rest of the family as well.
Cool. So what made you choose the Cambridge course?
Yeah, so I think first off is, honestly, like Karthik said, I think obviously the prestige plays a role. I think especially if you're not going to study a profession like medicine, then it really matters where you go. Economics at one university versus another is a very different career path, very different opportunities. So I was kind of very, very aware of that. Then second, when I looked at the courses, Cambridge was more theoretical and more mathematical, which was to my leaning. As I said, I like sciences, I like maths. So that kind of suited my skill set. And when I visited the universities, had a great time with the people as well in the college that I met. So it was a good kind of social fit, place I could see myself being happy at as well.
Cool. Yeah.
What about the application process, Karthik? What did you do? When did you start?
So actually, I was quite lucky. So my brother actually also went to Cambridge, so I had an idea about what it was like. And I visited him a couple of times, and I went to his graduation, and that kind of inspired me at the time, going around the colleges, and I could see myself enjoying myself there, and it seemed like an atmosphere that I wanted to be in. So I kind of was thinking about it early on in secondary school, that I wanted to kind of set my sights at Cambridge as a place that I'd want to be. But I'd say in terms of preparing for it, I'd say kind of when I was doing my GCSEs, I was kind of thinking about how I could maximize my application for Cambridge. What I would say is that Cambridge, of course, is very academic, so the priority should always be to do very well in your GCSEs or A levels, and to make sure that you do well in your exams, because without that, there's not very good chances of you getting in. So definitely that is still the most important thing, to make sure that you're good at your course. But there are things, of course, that you can do, and one of the things that is important in your Cambridge application is to show that you have commitment and enthusiasm for your chosen subject. And in my case, for medicine, that can be shown through various means, through work experience, through leadership activities at school, and reading medical news, and doing teaching and so on, to kind of show that you are interested in science and medicine. So yeah, I think 16 is kind of like when I was thinking about it. Of course, when I started applying my UCAS application, that was when I tried to try and get some more work experience and do all those extra things. But yeah, the earlier you start, I guess, the better.
And what's the course itself like?
So the course at Cambridge is traditional, with the first 3 years focusing on the core biomedical sciences, anatomy, biochemistry, physiology, and then more about pharmacology and neurosciences in your second year. And then uniquely in the third year, there's an opportunity to do research, especially if it's quite an expectation now in medicine to carry out research alongside your clinical work. So it's quite good, I think, that the Cambridge course tries to introduce you to those research methods, which are so crucial to any medicine practice. So you get a flavour of that in your third year. And there's quite a wide range of courses, which is also quite attractive for me, to kind of really broaden your knowledge and perspective in medicine. And then in the final 3 years, you get to go on the wards and put into practice what you've learnt through clinical placements in various specialties. And it's more self-directed in the clinical years. So you're expected to do more of your own work. It's less structured, and you get quite ad hoc teaching from clinicians who are obviously experts in their specialties. And you get to talk to patients and see how medicine is done in real life. So I think it's quite a good course that way, because you feel quite ready when you do go into the wards. in your fourth year with that knowledge of the biomedical sciences to fall back on. Yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it.
Very good.
Yeah. So just to ask you as well, Shyam, what sort of steps did you take to prepare for Cambridge?
Yeah, so first, fully agree with you that academics is the #1 priority for Cambridge. So like you studied hard for GCSEs, studied hard for my A-levels, IB. I think a couple of things beyond that that's worthwhile thinking about for economics. So the first is they do like you to have some research experience or some area that you can speak about in detail. So for me, I was very interested actually in farming. So I had done some research papers in Malaysian farming and what kind of government practices could be put in place to help farmers there. So what are the tax policies that could be put in place? What are the policies around distributing free goods to the farmers? And so I wrote that research paper and I submitted it with my application. Then the second thing I'd really recommend is reading. So for me, I was very interested in just developing that baseline of really understanding, the people in the last 20, 30 years who really shifted economics, understand their reading, as well as understand very traditional reading in economics in theory. So I read, first off, Milton Friedman, so really understood his teachings about monetary economics, that had really shaped, 1970 to 2010, theory from the Federal Reserve. And then I also was very interested in seeing the opposite of that view. So reading Lenin and his view on capitalism and communism as well. So I think showing that genuine interest, not just using economics as a conduit to, being an investment banker, but also having a genuine theoretical interest in it. And kind of really spending the time to get that understanding of the theory that's come before. Yeah, so I'd recommend those two things, but I think beyond that, #1 priority, just get good grades, and that will probably stand you in good stead.
Mm. Do you have to do any entrance exams for economics?
Yeah, so I had to do a couple of tests. So I did a maths test, and then I did a reading of an academic article on the Spanish mortgage crisis during 2008, and then gave some commentary on that. So I think, again, getting used to that kind of environment where you do quick integration, differentiation, quick analysis of kind of simple academic papers will again put you in good stead.
Yeah. And what is the course like for economics then? How have you found it?
Yeah, so economics, in a similar way to medicine, is quite traditional at Cambridge. So you will study microeconomics, macroeconomics, and mathematics primarily, as well as some history. So I think, this is a place for you if you want to study theory. If you want to study something more practical, like accounting or business, then there are other universities out there like LSE, but Cambridge, again, is a very theoretical place. I think a nice thing is they do give you some options to choose which area of economics to specialize in. So as you'd imagine, based on what I shared, I was interested more on the developing country economic side. So that's what I specialize into, as well as banking and finance. So you would equally get your own choice, whether you want to do statistics or mathematics or developing market economics and so on. But overall, similar to Karthik, very positive experience.
Yeah, and as you said, that there are quite a wide variety of career options after graduating. So how did you go about deciding what you wanted to do with your economics degree after graduating?
Yeah, so I would definitely encourage doing a lot of internships. So I did one at an NGO. So I worked in Amsterdam for a while. I did one at a hedge fund. So I worked in America for a bit. And then I did one at a bank and then one at a consulting firm. So it gave me the full range spectrum of kind of opportunities that there are out there, from NGOs, the kind of charitable public work, all the way through to the most kind of arduous hard work in the private sector, which is on the banking side. And I think for me, the opportunity that stood out the best was consulting. So essentially work with some of the largest companies and help them transform their internal business operations. So for example, in the UK, some of our clients are Coca-Cola or Google's operations in the UK, and they will come to us with a problem, and then we work with them to really help them solve it for 6 to 10 weeks, and then move on to another client. So I thought that was quite a dynamic kind of opportunity for me to pursue as a career. But as I said, there are many other opportunities. If public sector government work is what you want, that's very common out of economics at Cambridge. If you want to work in banking, investment banking, that's also very common. So it puts you in good stead to really pursue the career that you want.
Great. And just to come back to some specific steps for medicine as well, with regards to kind of things you can do, I would just like to add, based on what Shyam said as well, for medicine, it is quite useful, I'd say, in school if you can, to try and get some research experience. Cambridge is very theoretical, and they like people who can be quite research minded, who can think creatively about issues and how to perform experiments to try and find things out. So I did like a Goldcrest Award, which is like a national science scheme. I think it's quite a good way of linking with a supervisor who's potentially interested in having students, and hopefully you can learn from an experienced scientist, and do a project over a course of 4 to 6 weeks, gather some results and try and analyze them, and then hopefully write them up, and that'll give you something to talk about in your interview, and hopefully kind of impress them that you've actually shown some commitment to. Yeah, there are plenty of books now for medicine, because it's not something you necessarily learn about in school. You learn about biology, you learn about chemistry, but you don't learn exactly how that's applied in real life medicine. Which is why when you are applying for a medical course, it's important to show that you actually understand what a career in medicine is like, and reading books, listen to podcasts and things, a way that you can show that. And obviously getting work experience is not always easy, and you might have to email multiple people, multiple different places. Use your family contacts where you can. Anything helps, but these are ways that you can show kind of enthusiasm for the subject, which is really important.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you wanted to add? Do you want to kind of summarize what we've talked about?
Yeah. So I think there's some common themes from what we both shared. I think when you're choosing your subject, I think you definitely need to think about, is it a career that you want to do long term? Definitely wouldn't advise just choosing the most competitive career, or just what your friends want or what your parents want. I think really think about the rest of your life. You're really committing at that point, and you can't really change it that easily. Then I think in the application process, as we both shared, academics, as well as just trying to show that reading and real understanding of the subject, so you can really differentiate yourself. As you say, Cambridge, you interview, it's not just your grades. So you want to bring that real genuine interest and personality across.
Do you want to maybe give some advice about the interview, or like your experience of it?
Yeah, sure. So again, I think, because I had that research experience, the interviews were mainly about that research, and they were just trying to test how much I really understood behind the mechanics of it, what were the statistical methods I was using, and what were the main findings that I had. And actually both my interviews were about farming. So it shows if you just put a different topic out there and you do some research that you really care about, that it'll pay off.
Yeah. And Cambridge, actually, there's a special questionnaire that they do alongside the application, so you send off your UCAS personal statement, but then also you can fill out this extra bit of information, and that could sometimes use. So in the FAQ, I put down some books that I'd read, some topics that I was interested in, and in my interview, I was able to kind of tailor it a bit to a book I'd read called Emperor of All Maladies at the time. It was a book about cancer, and that quite broad, and obviously the interviewer had some interest in it as well. We were talking about tumor suppressor genes and some of the topics that came up in that book. And I mentioned some other topics in my personal statement, and obviously they kind of explore it a bit more in a bit more detail. But you can kind of sometimes tailor the interview a bit to your interests. They probably will. They did give me some graphs, and they do want to see how you can think on the spot. But there are definitely chances for you to show what you've done as well. So if you can, definitely try and bring that up in the interview. It's quite usual, I think, for other people in my year as well who felt that they didn't necessarily do that well in their interview, and that they got in. So it's not exactly the best. It's not exactly easy to predict how you've done. So you might feel terrible after the interview, but as long as you feel like you've really thought about the questions and you've really kind of been pushed, then that's always a good sign. Because they just want to see how you respond in the kind of tutorial setting. You don't get too flustered, and that you're able to respond to prompts and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
What I would say is to help with that, you can definitely it's quite useful. I found it quite useful to do like teaching at school. So just explaining the scientific concepts that you've learned in A level for medicine anyway is quite good, because you can give prompts to students, and then that you can see how they respond, and you can get an idea of like what a supervisor would do when they're teaching you, and it helps. Obviously, teaching makes you understand the topic better and more deeply. So I would say that was definitely a good thing to do. If your school provides mock interviews, that's always good. If you have people in the year above or in other years, or family friends who are Oxbridge and can give you some advice about the specific questions for the subject, then that at least can give you an idea of what kind of questions there are, to make you think about how to answer them. But there is no single perfect interview. It is a combination of things. So don't get too hung up on the interview. It's a kind of a holistic thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think probably similar for medicine, in economics, it's not always just about getting the right answer. As long as you can show that there was a thought process, that you're bringing in concepts that you've learned and things that you've read as well. Beyond that, I think you're on the right path, and you definitely won't feel 100% confident. I think that's something you'll have to get comfortable at Cambridge as well. That every supervision and every class that you take at Cambridge, you won't always know the answer, but you just got to know that you've applied the right logic. You've done the work. So as long as you put it in, I think can't do more than that.
And the final question I think you should get around to is that you might have heard of that there are many different colleges within Cambridge or Oxford. So it can be a bit confusing, which ones do I apply to? So just from my experience, what I would say is that it largely doesn't matter which college you apply to. You'll have a good experience. The main thing is, if you want to get into Cambridge, is to get into Cambridge regardless of college. So you'll have a good time regardless. But of course, it's probably worth visiting Cambridge or Oxford and going around the colleges to see which ones you like, talking to students there, seeing what it's like to study there. For me, I knew someone in Queen's, which is a college I'd go to, and he gave me kind of good feedback about life in the college. I visited Queen's, and it seemed like a great place to study. So it doesn't have to be, complicated process. you shouldn't spend too much time really on thinking about the college. It's more important to kind of prepare for your application to Cambridge. But yeah, that's kind of my experience. Did you have any particular inkling to modelling, Shyam?
Yeah, so I think for economics, one factor to consider is that the testing process is slightly different by college. So my college, I knew, did a bit of a maths test, and I knew that the director liked mathematics as well within economics. So that was one of the reasons that I thought it would, you know, from an application standpoint, it would be a good fit. But there are also different criteria for each college. I think also for medicine, certain colleges require certain slight deviations in grades. So I think I would just be aware of that. But as you say, don't spend too much time on it.
Yeah. No, you are right. That it's worth looking at the college websites to see their specific criteria. So for Queen's, for example, they like, for most subjects, you to kind of tell them what subjects or what topics within your subject interest you. And sometimes they will bring those topics up in the interview. In some colleges, there are 3 interviews, where two will be science based and one will be more like ethics and law based. In Queen's, I had 2 interviews, but yeah, it does vary a bit from college to college. The entrance exam criteria, how much they look at that compared to your UMS or your, like, you know, your grade at the end of A levels, does vary a bit. But yeah, broadly, you know, they do have roughly the same criteria, I would say. So yeah, just concentrate on your subject and being interested in the subject, talking about your subject, being enthusiastic about your subject, and hopefully that will get you far. So if you have anything else to add, Shyam, I think we've covered quite a bit there. So we kind of talked about when we started thinking about our subjects and what sort of steps we took, what the course at Cambridge is like, and deciding about the future and, you know, what kind of options to take. So yeah, the most important thing is to, you know, make sure that whatever you do decide to do is not, you know, it's not pressured, and that you are, you know, actually genuinely interested in the subject, and that will show when you come to your Cambridge interview that you are actually genuinely interested. So so that's probably the biggest takeaway from this.
Yeah, definitely would agree with that. And I think, you know, I think there are always concerns if you do, maybe medicine and economics is slightly more clear-cut on what job you do afterwards. But even if you want to study, I think, English or, you know, a language like French or something like that, I think if you really think you have a chance of getting into a good university like Cambridge and Oxford, there are many career paths beyond that. So I think if you, I would definitely widen your horizons if you think you can get into a good university. A lot of jobs actually open up to you that you think wouldn't. Like a lot of investment bankers who, you know, a lot of consultants, a lot of government officials, all studied, you know, English, French, humanities. So I think, again, that's something to consider, to not be too scared about taking that leap to something else if you really think you can get into a good university.
Great. Thank you for your time, Shyam. I think we'll end it there.
Thanks.